you have to find the measure.
Holy, that's awesome. Keep doing it.
Easy?
Leave it, please. Give me a.
What'd you do?
Wow.
You have to find the measure. It was going through the speaker.
Oh, come on.
Find the measure of both acute angles and the lengths of all three sides. So if the directions say solve a right triangle, this is what you got to do. You already know the 90-degree angle, so you just have to find the other two angles, and I'm going to teach you how to do that today. All right, and this is the way you're going to do it. You're going to use inverse. So I'm just going to define the first one because the other two are really the same thing. So the inverse tangent looks like this. See if you see it on the calculator. You see that on a calculator. Everybody, if you don't have a calculator, go get one because you need to know where that is. Otherwise, you won't be able to do this today. It finds the measure of the angle, actually how big the angle is, by using the tangent ratio. Finds the measure of the angle by using the tangent ratio. So what you've been doing leading up to this point is just finding the ratio, like opposite over adjacent. That gave you a ratio. Then what the calculator does, because it's purely on the calculator takes that ratio and converts it to the angle measure by using the inverse button. And it's all programmed in your calculator. I'll show you how to do that in a second. So this is how it's denoted. Tangent inverse, you use the tangent ratio to find the angle measure. Sine inverse looks like that. That just means you'd use the sine ratio to find the inverse, to find the angle measure. And cosine inverse. All it is finding how big the angle is, how many degrees, using the ratios. I don't know, I have to look at that. I don't know what H would be. All right, what I want you to do is, yes, I want you to do 1, 2, and 3. The more you do it every day, the more it sinks in. This is just review right here. Nothing new. Okay, set up the ratios. Remember, so, cut. This one, sine is SOH, S-O-H. Sine equals, from here, opposite over hypotenuse, 9 over 15. So we're going from A here. Okay. Cosine of B, so I'm up at this angle right here. Cosine is ca, adjacent over hypotenuse, so it's 9 over 15. Tangent is oa, toa. From B, it's the opposite over the adjacent. Okay, so sometimes if you just put your finger here or your pencil here or something, it's easier to see opposite over adjacent. Remember, the legs are always the opposite and the adjacent ones. So if that didn't go well, then please talk to me, because you got to know how to do that in order to do the rest of this. All right, so let's keep going with the inverse, and let's see how that helps us. So in this triangle, we have the 3 side lengths. Cool. We know this is 90 degrees. We don't know what these two are, but we can find them by these trig ratios. So I'm going to start with angle D. And I'm just going to use tangent just because. So I'm going to set up the tangent ratio. The tangent of D is the opposite over the adjacent leg, which is 16. Okay, so that's the tangent of D. So here we go. So now what you do is, first thing you do is set up the tangent, set up a ratio. You could have used sine, cosine, or tangent. It doesn't matter. Then you use the calculator and put in the tangent inverse of that ratio that you set up. So this is what you're going to put into the calculator right here. When you do that, it's going to give you the measure of angle D. So, get out a calculator. If you have one, let's try it out. Let's make sure you all get the same number because there's a kind of a, make sure if you have a graphing calculator, make sure you're on degree. Are you on degree?
61.9.
Okay, so yeah, so you go here, you go second tangent, now I have tangent inverse in there, and then you do 30 divided by 16, and I have to close the parenthesis. Enter. So, that is how big that angle is. Now we got to round to the nearest tenth, so what would it be? 61 point? Nope, the tenths place is right here, so this number is a 2, so we just drop it off. So, the measure of angle D is approximately 61.9 degrees. Okay, so we did that. This is 61.9 degrees. I'm just writing it in here. If I know this is 90, I know what this is. Can I figure out what that is real easy? By doing what? What do they add up to? So 180 minus 90 minus 61.9 degrees. And when you do that, we have a right triangle. We know 2 of the sides. Oh, if I know 2 of the sides, what handy dandy little equation can I use to find the third side? Starts with a P. Pythagorean theorem. So I'm going to start with that. You don't have to, but that's what I'm going to start with. I'm going to find this side right here using the Pythagorean theorem. Okay, this is a leg and that's a leg, so that's going to be my A and B in the formula. 5 squared is 25, 10 squared is 100, so they add together to 125. Then I take the square root of both sides, and I get C is about 11.2. So that's my third side. I'm just going to write it up here, 11.2. That's my third side. Okay, now I got to find either P or M. It doesn't really matter. I'll try M. Just so I can work with easy numbers, I'm going to do the opposite and the adjacent. Which ratio uses opposite and adjacent? SOHCAHTOA. Which one uses opposite and adjacent? SOHCAHTOA. TOA. What's a T stand for? So I'm going to do this. Yeah, I'll get to you in just a second. Tangent of M equals the opposite, which is 10 over 5, correct? So I set up the ratio. Then what's the next thing I have to do to find how big the measure of angle M? We just did it on the other side. What's the next thing we have to do? Use the what? Yeah, the inverse. We got to take the inverse, tangent inverse of 10 over 5, which is really just 2. I'm going to go to the calculator. So I'm going to do that. Inverse tangent of 2. Oops. Because 10 divided by 5 is 2. So I get that. And if I round to the nearest tenth, here's the tenth spot. What's after it? 3. So what do I do with these numbers? Just drop them off. So the measure of angle M is approximately 63.4. Okay, Lois saying, what was your question? I didn't, you could choose P too. It doesn't matter. I just picked M. You could do P, you could do tangent of P and all that. Now that I know what M is, it's 63.4. Can I easily figure out what P is? By doing what? Yeah. So I would just do 180 minus 90 minus 63.4. And the measure of angle P is approximately 26.6 degrees. So, I have all three sides and all three angles, and I solved it. Yes? It doesn't matter. I could have done any of the ratios because I have all three sides. You can do any of the ratios. I just chose transit. It doesn't really matter. I chose it because it was easy. 10 over 5 just gave me a 2, but it really doesn't make a difference. Okay? All right. This one is exactly the same as this. I want you to try it. Work through this, find the unknown side, and find the two acute angles. In whatever order you want, using whatever ratios work. So, not so, how did it go? If you didn't do sine and you did a different ratio, did you still get the same degrees? You should have gotten the same degree measures. I did sine of B. How many people worked with C instead? You could work with C. Doesn't matter. I can't read your faces.
I did good.
Tried it.
So? No. If it didn't go well, either talk to me or Mrs. Schultz as soon as I'm done here. Please, please, please. Well, you can get it. We can show it to you. You guys can do this. Okay? All right, this last part here is really very simple. Again, it's just using your calculator. It's just saying, okay, I want to know how big angle P is if I gave you the ratio as a decimal. So you just go to your calculator, use the inverse, and put in 0.37 instead of a fraction. You're just using a decimal instead of a fraction. So the measure of angle P is equal to whatever this is. It should be rounded to the 10th, it should be 21.7. So you just do it on the calculator. Okay, so then what would I do on the calculator for this? Cosine inverse of 0.28.
73.2.
And if you round it to the nearest tenth, you should get 73.7 degrees. You got 0.2? I don't know, let me see.
Yes.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Impressive. Yeah, so it's 73.7. So that is it.